Hey, and welcome back to Season 5.
Hello, and welcome back to Season 5 of Portland Big.
Strange and scary fuck ass.
That was actually my high school nickname. You strange and scary fuck ass.
Featuring Chop Talk, trivia, and main discussions into the odd and unusual. I'm your host, Tone, and I'm joined by Raggedy Andy, John, and Anthony, the boy.
The boy. Ooh, is this going to be a battle of the dolls? We just
Yes,
finished talking about Chucky, if you want to go check that out on Creep Cult. But Raggedy Andy versus the boy. I want to see it.
Knife fight.
The boy.
Yeah, so here's what we're talking about this week. We got some news to share. A new trailer dropped in the A24 realm. I don't know if anybody else saw it, and I don't know how related it is to the show, but we can mention it. And then we're going to play trivia. We got a new game this week. We're going back to Trivial Pursuit. And for our main discussion to continue, Nonfiction November, we are talking about War and Peace.
Yep, the exploits of
Ed and
Lorraine Warren of The Conjuring fame, of the Amityville Horror fame, of The Haunting of Connecticut fame. We'll talk about the veracity of those claims. I don't know why I'm doing this voice. I think
I'm not a fan of it.
Really?
Yeah. But you keep going. Give me a little more. Maybe it'll grow on me.
Do you know that Ed and Lorraine Warren were...
Tell me I don't want to go down that road.
Can you say Lorraine 5 other ways? Because you've said it different every time you've said Lorraine.
Hey, I'm telling you, Ed and Lorraine Warren don't want you to go up and down that dirt road up there, and you see those signs that say keep out, you don't be burying no pets in that old pet cemetery.
So that's what we're doing. Stay tuned if that at all interests you, and we'll go ahead and get started with Chop Talk.
Everybody's already clicked right out of this video. Oh, and they left a dislike while they were on their way out.
Why don't you take an axe and chop it open?
All right, well, before we get started with the news, John, Anthony, how are you fellas? You feeling better this week, buddy?
I'm on the uptick. As the audience probably can tell, I got you sick, which is super cool. I apologize for that.
Open to speculation.
Yeah,
I'm a little bit suspicious that this is some sort of like a succubus situation
that
where you're absorbing his life force to make yourself stronger.
Last time I have a three-way with you and Brittany. That's it. Especially if one of you has the sniffles. I'm done.
Jesus Christ. I mean...
Good to know that's your only like bar to get across for the threesome. Is like, you all better not have the sniffles, okay? That's all I got to say.
I mean, to be fair, you are the only one who still feels good right now, so maybe you're sucking the life force out of the two of us.
Hey, I've always been very open about the fact that I do tend to suck the life out of all the rooms that I walk into. So, and I'm not ashamed of that. But I'm doing well. I've been thinking a little bit about my brand, the internet darling, the boy. Yeah. And I'm starting to think that maybe it's time for the boy to become a man.
Okay.
The man.
You want to call you the man?
Yeah. If you could just start, Anthony, it's like the band, Portugal the Man. If you could just start calling me Anthony the Man, it would help me feel like I had a few extra hairs on my chest.
But then you're not Brahms. What's your voice going to be? Because I'm the boy.
Well, I don't want to spoil the plot of the boy, but I could still be Brahms.
Okay. But I'm the man.
Exactly that. I'm the man.
I'm the man.
Yeah, we don't do this a lot, but I'm going to go ahead and veto that.
Oh, okay. Well, good to know you're so in love with the branding I've already come up with that you're unwilling to part with it.
I'm fine with the internet darling going away. I liked when you changed it to web sensation.
Web sensation. I did do that for a little bit.
So stupid. Oh, but I loved it. All right, cool. Well, news. The Whale trailer came out. Did you guys watch it?
Darren Aronofsky.
Fraser. I don't know what this movie's about. I don't know if it's at all related to the show, but we are big Brendan Fraser fans.
From what I've heard, it is a super depressing film about...
By Darren Aronofsky?
Yeah, right. About...
I'm shocked.
Yeah, it probably has something to do with the Bible, but... Brendan Fraser plays a really, really obese, depressed man, and Sadie Sink is in it. That's all I got. Darren Aronofsky, Brendan Fraser, Sadie Sink. I'm sold. I didn't need to watch the trailer. I'm just like, I'm going to go in as soon as I have, in a year when this, gets out of the festival circuit. It'll probably all when the A24 screening room does The Whale. That's when I will check it out. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I just hope Ahab shows up. You know what I mean?
I was thinking about how I can make a Moby Dick joke, but then I was like, is that offensive? But Brendan Fraser's not actually that fat, but like, is that still offensive?
I don't know. John?
My ass is probably going to be crying. That's all I know. I've seen the videos of all the people doing, standing ovations for Brennan and his performance, which I'm like, thank Christ, he still got them chops. You know what I'm saying?
I read through some of the comments on YouTube, and it was like, I hope he knows how much we all love him, and it was a bunch of comments like that. And I was like, that's so cool.
Yeah,
I'm sure he will never know that those people wrote that on there, but I hope somewhere he feels it.
Yeah,
because he had a tough go of things for a while.
Yeah, the industry definitely chewed him up and spat him out, and for all the work that he put into it and all of the physical pain he's in because of all the shit that he did to give us those mummy movies that we all love so much. Dude deserves some accolades coming his way, finally, and I'm happy that he's making a comeback. I do have a couple small horror-related things, but it's not going to be a big chop talk because a little peek behind the curtain. It hasn't been that long since we recorded last, so not a ton of crazy stuff. Plus, we're going into the holiday season, which means that news is not going to be as busy as it was leading into Halloween time. But we do have an announcement of a new picture written and directed by our old friend Osgood Perkins.
Right on.
Director of The Black Coat's Daughter and Gretel and Hansel, movies that I like to varying degrees. This one stars Nicolas Cage, the Rage Cage himself, and it's called...
You know what? Speaking of that, real quick side note, I want him to be in the new 28 movie so that we can actually get a Rage Cage.
Dude! I can't do a Nick... I'm trying to think of how I can do the Rage line, but in a...
I don't want it. Dude, we gotta have it. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Cage, I did watch a few episodes of the History of Swear Words show on Netflix. Yeah. That dude is just... I love him. But the movie's called Long Legs. Like a daddy long leg. Wonder if that's the pun or the implication. And the only other bit of news that I have, speaking of long legs, The Crooked Man.
I heard about this one, yeah.
Finally happening?
No, it is not happening at all, ever. As far as we know from James Wan. He did an interview recently and said that the Crooked Man spinoff is not moving forward. The only reason I include this in news is because we're talking about the Warrens today. And I never really wanted the Crooked Man to get its own spinoff. I was like, it was fine in that movie, but whatever.
Do the same thing to The Nun 2. The Nun 1 sucked. We don't need a second one.
They're going to get so much mileage. That's the thing, is that scare with the nun where she's in the painting in The Conjuring 2 was so well done and freaked so many people out that they're going to have spawned an entirely separate franchise just based on that one scene. And to me, that's an indication of, pretty much all of James Wan's career has been he does fucking awesome, striking visual stuff. And then it spawns an entire franchise that's unrelated to anything that he has involvement with. And it's all based on one scene, basically, from a movie that he's made. So good for James Wan, making bank. But the next project that he's involved with is that Megan thing that he's collaborating with again with his wife.
It's the robot girl?
The robot girl.
The robot girl.
See Jason Blum dressed up as the robot girl for Halloween?
I did not see that.
It's pretty funny. But that's all I got for news.
I want to send out a call to action to anybody listening and or watching.
Ooh, CTA.
Yeah. For our 200th episode, we would like to hear from you guys. So if you want to send us a voice memo or shoot us an email or a message on Instagram or even shoot us a video, we'll try to splice those into our 200th episode, which is coming up pretty quick. We're on the road to 200 now, which feels crazy because I feel like we just did that big 100th episode.
That's because it probably shaved years off of all of our lives with the fucking scheduling nightmares and the fucking editing it all together and whew.
Yeah, so we're going to take a different approach this time, and we're going to ask you to participate.
Yeah, one that involves less work on our part. Because, I definitely feel like a part of me has never lit up again since we did that episode. So
yeah, so you can send us a voice memo or whatever you want to do, either that or on Instagram or email. It's in the description. It's porsonpeak@gmail.com. So we would love to hear from you in any capacity, and we will feature that on our 200th. Other than that, it's kind of it, right?
Yeah. Check out the Instagram. I'll be talking about that same thing. But in the meantime, here's some trivia, right?
Some trivia,
some trivia?
Yep. Some trivia.
That Christmas house of wax, the fog, piranha. It's one of those, right? Right?
The boy.
Oh, that's what you're thinking about. Okay.
Are you ready to play your tune?
Pick up John Slack. Sing us a song.
Your trivia tune this week.
What?
Huh?
After all that, you're going to let him call you the boy?
Oh,
that
the
what-
man. I'm sorry. The man.
I mean, frankly, I didn't understand a goddamn word he just said, so I didn't pick up on the fact that he called me the boy. But hey, you need to check yourself before you riggedy wreck yourself.
Yeah, and I voted for Jess Self in today's election.
So did I.
And as previously stated, I voted for Mayor McCheese. Your trivia tune this week is Trivia. 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 Trivia.
You better run.
There we go. He just wanted to listen to the song.
Yeah. He's like, I'm out here vibing.
That is Dead Man's Bones. What's
Yeah.
the name of it, though?
In the Room Where You
In
Sleep.
the Room Where You Sleep.
Because
which
that
is
song
in The Conjuring.
is in The Conjuring.
Good pull out of last minute. to be
Yeah,
honest.
Thanks. Yeah, I actually got to. I didn't even think about it when I put on The Conjuring Halloween night, but I got to sneak in one last Dead Man's Bones song before midnight on Halloween.
Hello, Dead
I was
Man
happy about that. Let's not get too excited. You're gonna make me start clapping and slapping and children's choir and
All right. We're going back to Trivial Pursuit horror movie
the new
edition.
adventures of old trivia.
So we're just gonna go here. We're gonna go here.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna go here. I'm gonna read to John. John's gonna read to Anthony. Anthony will read back to me.
Man, I'm looking at these and I'm like, yeah, the gap in knowledge between what we were playing in previous weeks and this is substantial.
So it'll be 6 rounds, 1 question per category each, and whoever wins or ties, that's how it's gonna end. We're not gonna go into tiebreakers anymore. John, hit us with that first category.
First category is monster.
All right. Your question, John. In The Wolfman from 1941, the protagonist, Lawrence Talbot, buys a cane decorated with a silver bust of what animal?
He buys a Michael Caine.
Gonna go out on a limb and say that it's a wolf.
That is correct, sir. Yeah. Fucking, wow. Maybe not.
I was wondering why he was carrying around that alpaca-headed cane that entire movie.
Oh shit! All right,
Dumb fucking question.
When the full moon comes out, I become the alpaca man.
Anthony, what is the name of the princess of whom Helen is the reincarnation in The Mummy from 1932?
Oh, from 1932.
From 1932.
Let me see the answer.
I mean, I only know I think that she's like I can't remember if she's a reincarnation in the new one of Nefertiti or Nefertiri.
You're overthinking it.
And what's the name of the character?
Wait, so what was the question again? What's the name of the character?
So what
who's
is
the
the name
reincarnation?
of the princess of whom Helen is the reincarnation of in The Mummy from 1932? And I'm just going to say, you're overthinking it.
Now I'm overthinking it because you said I was overthinking it. So now I'm
I'll give you a hint. It's the same as the one from 1998.
Yeah.
Who does Imhotep want?
Noxunamun.
Yeah. That is correct. Princess.
Oh man, you can
Inoxamun.
tell I was real bored during the 32 Mummy because I couldn't for the life of me remember that was even part of the plot.
Mm-hmm.
Tone, what special effects artist created the werewolf or the were-alpaca transformation scene in An American Werewolf in London from 1981?
Fuck, dude. I can never remember his name.
Give you a hint. It earned this person their inaugural Academy Award for Best Makeup.
Fuck, dude, I can never remember his name. Because it's not Savini and that crew.
Which means it's definitely not an offshoot, so it wouldn't be...
Berger or Nicotero.
Yep.
I can never remember his name, though. I can tell you the director. That's not the question, is it?
It's not.
Fuck, you know it?
I don't think so.
This special effects artist was the reincarnation of what Egyptian princess? You're overthinking it.
No, I know. I just can't think of his name. I'm just going to pass because it's not coming to me. I don't want to waste any more time.
It is Rick Baker.
Oh,
Kept
fuck.
saying Burger.
Yeah, I was trying in my head to I was like, how can I hint at it? Like, oh, if you had
Skateboards.
if you had a dozen of this guy, you might call it a.
Fuck, I can never remember his name.
This is
I'm
good.
either like Savini or Ray Harryhausen.
Yeah,
Those are my two extremes.
very similar artists, right? This is fun though. This is exciting. We're all kind of slipping up a little bit because obviously the trivia is already 10 times as hard as anything that we've done in the past month. So,
Except John's question.
Next category is gore/disturbing.
All right, at the end of that round, Anthony and John are tied, and I'm at 0. John, what Superman Returns from 2006 co-writer directed Trick or Treat from 2007?
Oh,
damn! I did not know that this person was a co-writer on that movie.
oh, god damn it! I don't.
Anthony said his name not 2 weeks ago, bud.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago doesn't help me.
Will it help you if I say that I usually say it in a funny voice? No.
When I read it and I see it now, I think of
Think of redacted.
Redacted.
Oh, shit! It's never what I think about when I think about Trick or Treat.
What do you think about
Mizzle.
Sam?
Yeah, Sam was a little
He
sucker.
thinks about the part where all the ladies get naked in the woods. And
I mean, I'm not saying that.
And
you know
how he's
what I'm
like kind of turned on, but then when they start peeling their skin off, he's even more turned on, and he doesn't know if that means there's something wrong with him.
It's like that. It's like that Pete Holmes joke where he's like, you ever click into something and just be glad that you didn't get an erection because you're not into that weird shit, or like basically the description of the opposite of being like, oh no,
My life will never be the same.
Passing?
yeah, I'm gonna pass.
All right, Anthony, hit us with it.
Michael Dirty.
Oh, dirty, down and
dirty.
son of a bitch.
You'll remember it next time for sure.
Yeah. All right, Anthony. Who directed the Grindhouse fake trailer for Thanksgiving?
Come on, you gotta be fucking kidding me. It's cutthroat now. Now that there's people losing. No more hints. Nefertiti, motherfucker.
I don't know. Is this visionary horror director Eli Roth?
It is indeed Eli Roth.
Thanksgiving.
Why didn't that movie actually get made? Did it actually get made? Because they made 2 Machete movies.
They did. They're supposed to be making it in space, which I'm like, just do it.
Yeah.
But the people that made The Barn, that studio or whatever, has a ton of movies in similar vein
Oh, really?
to The Barn, but like with other people doing, like they have witches. I think they have a Thanksgiving one too.
I've been checking like every couple weeks to see where the fuck The Barn 2 is, like what's happening with it.
Yeah.
And
They just released a thing a few weeks ago that was like, your shit's coming if you want. Now that we have more people in the movie, we can have them autograph your shit for more money.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
it's happening. It's in festivals right now.
yeah, because I'd seen that people were already reviewed it, and I was like, well, where are you seeing it? Because
I want my fucking piece. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tone, I have a question for which I need an answer.
Ooh, that's new.
What is the name of the mutant that sacrifices herself to help the Carter family survive in The Hills Have Eyes from 2006? Could I be any more specific?
I have no idea.
It's Ruby.
Oh, right on.
Ruby the mutant.
Man, can we go back, huh? It's like, you know,
I missed
sex
the
for a long
old
time, when
trivia.
you bust that first nut just looking at a pussy. You know what I mean?
I only got the end of whatever that statement was.
Ugh.
All right.
All right, well, John, you on the board?
I have 1-1
No, I got 0.
Oh, yeah. So 1. Did you get yours?
I've gotten both of mine so far.
Wow. All right.
Next category is
Not to brag or anything.
psychological.
John, in It Comes at Night, 2017, which character is the son of Paul? Is it Travis, Will, Andrew, or Bud?
Can you give me the names one more time, please?
Travis, Will, Andrew, or Bud?
I'm going to say Will.
The correct answer is Travis.
All right.
Just to be clear to the viewer, John is not looking up the answers with that computer that's in front of him. He's controlling all the crazy, I assume, impressive shit you're saying going on with the camera throughout the episode.
It works well enough, right?
He can't see that. You bend back.
That'll be funny for
Just
the
a deer in
audience.
the headlights.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Thanks.
Anthony, what is the name of the U.S. Senator and presidential candidate for which Leo Barnes is head of security in the Purge election year from 2016?
What the fuck kind of questions are these, is all I gotta say.
Yeah, we fucked up. We should have just went to the Marvel.
Game over, man. Game over. In the Purge,
What's the name of the senator?
Yeah.
that Leo Barnes has to,
That's Frank Grillo.
yeah.
I think so.
Senator McCheese. that's
That son of a bitch.
son of a bitch. That's all I got. I have no chance of guessing this.
It's Senator Charlie Roan, of course.
It's Charlie Roan.
Roan, R-O-A-N.
Oh, damn. All my Purge heads out there in the audience are really upset at me for not getting that one. Sorry, Purge heads. I'll get it next time. Tone, I have a question for which I will need an answer.
Okay.
In what decade is The House of the Devil from 2009 set?
Oh man, that's good. Trying to remember. I'm torn between the 60s and the 70s.
Ripped in twain.
Yeah. I'll go 70s.
You said you were between the 60s and the 70s?
Yeah.
It was the 80s.
Is it the 80s?
1980s. Yep.
Weird. I
The
thought it was earlier than
80s, yes.
that. Damn. All right. Not my week.
Old T.I. West.
Still
huh?
2-1-0.
Sure. Sounds good. What's the next category, bud?
Next category is paranormal.
In what decade is Ouija, Origin of Evil, set in? Ouija.
Oh, yeah.
Ouija 2.
Ouija 2, I'm going to say is
The movie.
1970s.
Oh, it's 1960.
Ah, son of a bitch.
I was going to say 50s. We're just all so bad with dates.
Mm-hmm.
Both like on a timeline and
yeah.
when we meet people in public. And
Yeah, I was on a date once, and I was like, I really just don't like the way my index fingers look.
I was on a date once and I was like, you want to hear about Houdini and the chimp nuts? She was like, oh my God, you're in a band?
No.
No. Talking about real chimp nuts.
Real Houdini.
On a real man's sack.
Anthony, what type of animal is Black Phillip in The Vivitch from 2015?
Well, you know, some of us who are big fans of that movie might call him the goat.
Yes, he is a goat.
He's the goatiest of all time.
He
Have
is
you
a
ever
goat
said the
indeed.
phrase throat goat?
Only in reference to Nancy Reagan.
Oh, okay. Because I have this tea, and it's called throat coat. And so every time I look at it, I'm like, does Anthony say throat goat? It's like, is that a thing?
This guy.
It sounds a lot more like a Johnism, but I've heard that, I think, Nancy Reagan was the throat goat. She was known for her
Fellatio.
immaculate fellatio, apparently. Well, history lesson for you while we're in our nonfiction November.
There you go.
Tone, very fittingly for what we're talking about this episode. Who spit on myself. Sorry, it's because I have a question and I need an answer. I forgot to say that part. Who composed the musical score for the Amityville Horror from 1979?
Rick Baker.
So close, it was Lalo Schifrin.
I'm gonna eat a fucking goose egg, dude.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Breaks my heart. These are hard questions, though. Yeah.
They are. So it's 3-1-0 currently.
I'm feeling
Good.
I mean, not just because I'm winning, but also just because like I like the challenge. Like
Yeah.
the other ones were just kind of like they were fun, but too easy.
Next category is killer.
Speaking of killers, what actor played Patrick Bateman in American Psycho from 2000?
American Psycho, the stage play.
Ooh, that'd throw me the fuck off. But I'm gonna say it's Christian Bale.
Yep, close enough.
And it was Matt Smith in the stage production.
They did a stage play.
They did a stage production with Matt Smith
Recently?
as a few years ago
That's cool.
as Bateman. I think it was like right after his Doctor Who tenure,
Oh,
so a few years ago.
I'd watch that.
Me too.
Me too. Anthony, what other Christmas-themed film did Black Christmas director Bob Clark make?
That's going to be one we were talking about last week
That's what we were talking about last week.
within the Alfieverse.
Yeah.
A Christmas Story.
It is indeed a Christmas story from 1983.
Do you know he also directed a movie called Karate Dog?
I did not.
Bob Clark did not have the greatest career after Black Christmas and A Christmas Story. He also did the Porky's movies, both Porky's
Those are
1
like
and 2.
Classics, right? Cult classics.
Like classic raunchy, like college
Yeah.
comedies, kind of like set the stage for the American Pie franchise. Tone, I have a question. I need an answer. Stat. Maddie in Hush from 2016 is which of the following? A writer, a photographer,
Thank God.
a musician, or a farmer?
He's on the board, baby.
A writer. And she wrote Midnight Mass.
Yeah, she did indeed. And thank you for doing that, Maddie. We enjoyed it.
We did enjoy
Yeah.
it.
she's
Midnight
a
Mass
writer.
was fucking sick, brother.
Yeah,
But how did she write it and star in it?
I don't know, but I have a foot cramp, so I can't even concentrate on trying to answer your question.
Yeah, we've been talking about that.
And we
in-
cramp and we
in a couple of
cramp.
movies that we watched where they reference someone who made a movie in that movie. You know what I mean? Where it's like then loops around on itself and makes no sense.
The Chucky thing we were talking about.
Yeah.
How it's like Chucky goes psycho or whatever, but
Right.
also Bride of Chucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, this is confusing. But they do that in an Agatha Christie book. This kid's like, hey, read all the mystery novels. This person, Agatha Christie. And I was like, wait, what?
That reminds me of like apparently Stephen King inserted himself as a character in his like Dark Tower verse. There is like, because basically it's meta to the point of like there's our real life reality, there's the It universe, and all this stuff, and Stephen King, the writer, is like a pivotal figure.
Weird.
Interesting.
In the story.
All right, so it's
Good job, dude.
It's 4-2-1.
So you already won.
Yep. So the game is already over. We're going into international as the final category.
John, after surgery, restores her sight in The Eye from 2002. What is protagonist Mun able to foresee?
Killings, murders, crimes. Killings or murders.
Crimes of the future.
Of Grindelwald? I'll give it to you. It just says death.
Okay.
So, I mean, what do you think? Close enough?
That works.
Saying close enough, John.
Yeah, what if she suddenly gained the ability to just see clips of Crimes of the Future in her head?
That'd be kind of fucking weird, dude. Kind of fucking weird. Kind of like this question. On what holiday is Inside from 2007 set?
Inside of you.
Which holiday gives me the most gonna cut your baby out of the inside of you vibes, you know?
That's tough. Arbor Day.
I was thinking Arbor Day, yeah. Labor Day, because of
Oh,
birth.
there we
I'm
go.
going to say Labor Day.
Oh, waka waka.
What is it? Is that your answer?
Yeah, Labor
This
Day.
is a legit answer.
Oh, that's the legit answer. Okay.
Because I have no clue outside of that.
It's Christmas Eve.
Okay.
a
Is Christmas
holiday?
Eve a holiday? Yeah. I don't think so. I think I should get a point.
That's how that works.
I'm insatiable. I'm like, I already won. I'm like,
I'm famished for points.
Tone, your question, and I need an answer. At the start of Raw from 2016, what has protagonist Justine abstained from eating all her life? Of course, you get the softest of softball questions for your last one.
Meat.
It is indeed meat.
The meats.
can't step foot in an Arby's.
I had Arby's the other day, and it was exactly what you
That look on your face was the look in my head when he said that. I was like, I'm not gonna be rude and make a disgusted face, but
I couldn't control it.
I didn't go to Arby's. My buddy was like, "Hey, you want an Arby's?" I was like, "You just have Arby's in your car?" And he was like, "Yeah."
Yeah, it's Carby's.
Yeah, and somehow that convinced you that it was a good idea.
Yeah. So no, what I did is I put flaming hot chili cheese Fritos on.
Okay. So
You're wondering why you're sick, eh?
I know exactly why. It was that 3-way.
we already went over this. Not in as much detail as I would have liked, but
anyway, that's gonna wrap it up
also
for
cool
trivia.
invite.
Congratulations on your first solo win of the season.
Yeah.
Thanks. It feels good. I'm glad to be back in the saddle, as they say.
Yeah, that was tough, especially for me. I think we all did pretty good.
Yeah. Let us know if you felt the blood coursing through your veins, like at least I did. I know you guys are both like dying, or you mostly you're dying, but
What do you mean?
Because of the 3-way and the being sick and all this stuff. Gotta keep
How
covering
so?
the same ground. Yeah. But yeah, if you enjoyed that, if you're excited that we're back on Trivial Pursuit, let us know. We'll probably keep continuing to do this unless somebody says
clearly you
otherwise.
forgot.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I think this solves the mystery of, you think we're gonna just know all the answers? No, absolutely not.
No
You're fucking
shot.
Britt Baker, so.
Yeah.
What
So
a
this will
fool.
be a good refresher. We're all learning together.
Yeah, so we're going to take a break. Some of you are going to get some ads for BetterHelp, and some of you are going to get an ad for the Creep Cult. We hope that you join both of those if you need to, and we'll see you after the break.
Join the Creep Cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/Porcelain Peak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more. Join the Creep Cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/Porcelain Peak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more.
Hey, you want to see something really scary?
Welcome back. We are going to get started with our main discussion, continuing our nonfiction November. We are talking about Ed and Lorraine Warren. So
You guys hear the chain rattle, or do you think that's just like a loose pipe in the attic?
there's a little girl playing the hoax.
Yeah.
Right, so if you don't know, Ed and Lorraine are the inspiration, well, their case files are the inspiration for the Conjuring movies, loosely, and then Amityville is another one, and we're going to get into some details about these specific hauntings. And then the Annabelle movies. I don't know if I said that, but
Yeah, weird that their exploits have not only inspired things that are directly based on the case files, but then also the entire Annabelle franchise,
Right.
The entire
Even
Nun franchise, the
like
Curse
Ghosts
La
of
Llorona.
Connecticut.
Yeah, the Haunting in Connecticut.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
It's
it's
based off
also
something that they did loosely. Again, all
Yeah.
that stuff is very loose.
So I thought an important way to start this discussion, because people are very they're pretty much of two minds when it comes to Ed and Lorraine Warren. You're either in the camp of pretty much behind, like, I think most people can agree that the Conjuring movies are, very heavily exaggerated and changed up and switched around from what actually happened. But there's the camp of people who think Ed and Lorraine Warren actually were investigating real paranormal stuff and real demons. And then there's a camp of people who are like, they're hack frauds and everything they said was fake and a lie, and they're taking advantage of people. And I think where you lie on that spectrum really has a lot to do with your own beliefs in the paranormal. So I wanted to open the discussion by asking everybody here, what are your thoughts? I'm sure we've talked about this in the past, but I think it'll be good going into this conversation for us to say, like, for me to say, I am not somebody who believes in the paranormal. I don't think that ghosts exist. So when it comes to things involving hauntings, I am extremely skeptical. And so I tend to take them with a massive grain of salt and be like, okay, there's obviously some exaggeration going on. And when I go into the Conjuring movies, I've never once, maybe when I saw the first one, thought, okay, this is like what actually happened. I think a long time ago I learned that when the remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre tried to use the based on true events thing, I was like, okay, we're in we're in completely different territory now from events that actually occurred in real life.
Based on, because it was loosely inspired by Ed Gein, right?
Yeah, like a million
You can
other
just say whatever
things.
you
But
want.
yeah, for me, I'm somebody who, I'm not going to go out of my way to attack somebody who does believe in ghosts. I think if people have had paranormal experiences, that's a totally valid experience that you had, and I'm not going to start trying to go, hey, actually, it could have been this thing, because, especially when it comes to like spirits and the afterlife, people are very, very, they're very, very, they feel strongly about it. And
Right.
I think that's why, like, I wanted to kind of have this discussion, because I don't want people to necessarily think that this is going to be like an entirely hate on Ed and Lorraine Warren.
I want us to present facts of things that we...
So similar to what we talked about last week with Houdini is like, yeah, while it's fun to talk about all of the like, oh, maybe he was a spy, maybe he did this thing, maybe he did that thing.
Stuff.
That's all speculative, and there are things about the Warrens that we'll be reading to you that it's like, this is 100%, what actually happened in their life, and then the rest, we're going to be going off of what other people who were involved said, because I think that what ends up happening is that, especially with the Conjuring movies, those were made, at least the first couple, while at least Lorraine Warren was still alive and consulting on them, and they had a very strict kind of structure of what they were allowed to talk about when it came to the Warrens and what they were allowed to portray on screen. And that version of the Warrens people are very attached to, because it's Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, and they're great in those movies, and they have a great little love story, and they're fighting ghosts and it's all this stuff. I think it's important to separate that from, yes, Ed and Lorraine Warren were true life people who had positive things they did for people and also negative things they did for people. And there are a lot of people who have come out of the woodwork and along the way who have had, things to say about how much of taking advantage of people they were doing and how much lying to make money they were doing. And I kind of want to have a little bit more of a nuanced discussion than, when I pitched this, or when we kind of pitched this as something we wanted to do, it was like, let's talk about how Ed and Lorraine Warren are just fucking hack frauds, and through all of my research, I think I came to a more like, okay, I want to go into this with the nuance that actually exists in this situation, because people listening to this may be like, no, actually ghosts exist, and I'm 100% convinced that they were helping people out by doing this. And so
yeah, I'm in the camp, I guess I'll call it the X-Files camp, where I want to believe, but nothing pushes me one way or the other. Like, I know weird shit happens that we have yet to unexplain, but I don't know if that's necessarily ghosts or if it's just ghosts in the machine from the programming, man.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
we're in a simulation, man.
Right.
What about you, John? How do you feel on spook 'em ups?
For me, I'm not like an active skeptic, but I'm also like, I've never encountered anything that's caused me to believe in any one way or the other. Nor am I spiritual in any way. Like, I'm very much like, shit happens. That's how life goes.
When you die, you're in the dirt.
Yeah, when you die, you're
You're in the dirt.
if you paid good money for it, you get to become a tree later, kind of
That's
shit.
what I want to do.
Yeah,
I want to get fired into space, but that's a different conversation.
that's pretty tight.
I think that as far as Ed and Lorraine go, I think similar to, and you kind of mentioned this in our text thread, like, I don't want what Houdini didn't want, right? I don't want people taking advantage of other people's plight for financial benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think some of that nuance will come in, because I have kind of differing points on how much of what they were doing was actually exploitation of other people and how much of it was just them trying to make a buck themselves, and what the ramifications of some of the things they did were, what we'll get into later down the line after we go over some of their background. But I made the point, like, I feel like this episode and the Houdini episode just happened to be, for us flying by the seat of our pants and just kind of deciding what we're going to do the next week. It's a really perfect pairing of things, because we talked so much about the Houdini and his wife debunking the occult stuff and trying to make sure people didn't get taken advantage of, and then you have the Warrens, who are a couple who are kind of doing the opposite, which
They literally make a museum and like all kinds of crazy shit. They're
and
all
taking
about like
advantage of
demonology.
the time period and the panic around certain things that were happening then, and trying to make a buck off of it. And at the end of the day, hey, make your bread however you got to make your bread. But I don't know if lying to people is really the best way to do it. But we should get into a little bit of the background of Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Yeah, there's not a ton, really, which is surprising considering how much in the public eye they kind of are in the last 10, 15 years. We know Ed was born in 26 and Lorraine was born in 27. This was something I learned, that he apparently lived in a haunted house for a few years. Did you read that too?
Yeah, so he was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Pretty much everything Ed and Lorraine Warren involved, unless they were abroad, like with the Enfield poltergeist, like in Conjuring 2, where they were in the UK. Most of the stuff happened in and around the Connecticut area.
Like New England territory.
Right.
But yeah, he was born in 26. His father was a state trooper and a devout Catholic. And yeah, they rented an old house with an unmarried landlady who didn't like dogs or children and constantly threw things at them. Eventually, when Ed was 5, the landlady passed away and he started seeing basically her ghost in his closet.
Yeah, I read at some point that if he was outside playing and he came back to the house and nobody was there, he wouldn't go in for hours until somebody came home.
Yeah, I read here that like it says he took more comfort sitting outside in the freezing weather and pouring rain than living inside the haunted house, which is pretty terrifying. And hey, when I was a kid, I thought I saw shit, like, you know, whether it was a half dream or things in the dark. Like I empathized for little Ed Warren, but
all kids have like that. All kids have like that, like monsters in the closet, monsters under the bed kind of thing. So I mean, like, imagine like being so terrified of that you feel like you can't just exist in your own house. That's got to be shitty.
Yeah, it sounds like Ed had some trauma.
Yeah, he also saw the ghost of his aunt throughout periods of his life that he was living here. She told him, I guess, that he told her, because his aunt was a nun, that he wanted to be a priest when he grew up, and she told him that he would never be a priest, but that he would consult priests and do more good work than 100 priests combined. So this could be part of the Ed Warren myth-making of why he was allowed to do the things that he did. But
sounds a little bit about, you know, a little tall tale-ish for sure.
Yeah, but eventually, at the age of 12, they moved out of the haunted house. But that had already fueled his desire to explore all things spooky and haunted. Just 3 blocks away from Ed lived Lorraine Moran. Lorraine was born a few months after Ed in January of 1927. She also went to a Catholic school, a Catholic girls' school. And when she was 12, she first discovered her gift of clairvoyance. The story goes that it was Arbor Day, of all days, at the Catholic school that she was at. They were planting a sapling, and as Lorraine says it, she was able to see the tree fully grown in the future, and she was looking up like toward its leaves, and one of the nuns asked, like, what are you looking at? She said, I'm looking at the leaves of the tree. She goes, are you seeing into the future? And she says, I guess that's what's happening. And so then they like sent her to a retreat to like basically like beat the evil psychic power out of her. Because they saw it as a sin. And she also talked about how
you're not gay and you're not magic.
Yeah, they also talked about how she did
people
see.
People have been telling me that for years. And I'm very disappointed.
Damn it, do it, Cox. You're not gay or magic.
The wrong son's gay with magic.
Lorraine, despite not being gay or magic, did see the auras of all of the teachers and like other students at her school, different colored auras, and she says that she was always confused as to why other people couldn't see the same thing.
I read a different account of her first time, that it was her and Ed and they were on a trip together.
Well, you were reading an account of her first time. That's totally different.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so she was in a house and she totally got bricked. No, they were on a trip with a couple of friends, and they were like, where's this haunted house? We want to go find this haunted house. And his kids told them, like, oh, it's around the corner or whatever, so they went. And then that was what I read, where he was like, yeah, that was the first time that she had, like, a vision.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's weird.
Well, I found that like quite a bit going through trying to learn about the early years of their stuff, because really like you can find everything that you need to know about when they were actually exploring the paranormal, but the stories, like it's hard because it seems like told different stories about how they first discovered like what they were, you know, the demonologist and the clairvoyant stuff, and so it's all kind of confusing. But what we do know is that at age 16, Ed worked as an usher at the Colonial Theater in Bridgeport. He and Lorraine met on the 23rd of June, 1943. Lorraine says that she actually, when she first met Ed, she was able to like see into the future and see what he would look like, or like what he would be like as a man. And she went, this is the guy I want to spend the rest of my life with.
Hot damn.
Yeah, she looked at him and saw Patrick Wilson. I would, you know, be down to clown at that point.
When does he join the Navy? Is that coming up?
Yeah, coming up. So they ended up spending the next 50 years together, but
in the Navy.
Yeah, he ended up very shortly after that joining the Navy, and while he was in the Navy, the ship that he was on sank.
Yeah, crazy.
And so he was sent home on like a month-long like survivor's leave.
Yeah, but he also dove in and saved somebody.
Oh, really? I didn't read that part. That's cool.
And was he got a medal for bravery.
Good
so that's
for
cool
him.
too. Yeah. So I'm like, I want to like you. You know what I mean? So I doing some research, I started to feel a little bit conflicted. But
people are complex.
He also went to art school.
Yeah. So
which is crazy.
Yeah, so they ended up, while he was on his leave, they ended up getting married in 1945, and then they ended up having a daughter the next year, Judy. I don't remember, I think Judy is the name of the daughter in the movies, but I can't remember if it's the same name, but I assume it is.
John,
but
quick research?
Yeah, can you look it up, John? But yeah, Ed ended up attending art school for a short time. He enjoyed painting landscapes. For a while, Ed and Lorraine were pretty broke. Yeah. When they first got married and had a kid, and they were trying to figure out what they were going to do to make money. And their first thought was, we're both into art, so we'll do art things. And what he would do, because it was something that interested him, is he would paint supposedly haunted houses. So he would go find the house, he would stand across the street with his easel and spend hours painting this beautiful landscape of the house. And then his way of kind of getting in and learning about the homeowners and about the home was he would just kind of show up to the door with Lorraine and be like, hey, we painted your house. And then for whatever reason, I guess back in the 40s and 50s, people were just like, oh, you painted my house? That's not weird at all. You've been standing across the street staring at us for several hours. Okay, yeah, no, go ahead and come on in and we'll tell you all about our life history and everything that's been going on with us. But
quick aside, McKenna Grace played Judy Warren in Annabelle Comes Home.
Nice. So at least I got one thing accurate. Yeah, so that's how he would kind of get in and talk to them about what was causing their troubles. So start out very small in their neighborhood, you know, painting these houses, talking about hauntings.
They got in one little fight with a ghost.
They were kind of ended up becoming confidants for all the strange occurrences that were happening in people's homes around them. And as their reputation grew, so did their knowledge. And soon they found themselves giving advice to more and more homeowners. And eventually in 1952, they started the New England Society for Psychic Research, or NESPR. Which is the oldest ghost hunting group in New England, currently run by their son-in-law, Tony Spera, and their daughter, Judy.
Which is really funny because later in life, they end up coming up against a science-based group that is a very similar name. And it's really funny that they kind of like clash. And they both have these weird
New England Skeptic Society. Yeah.
In my research, it said that they claim to have investigated 10,000 cases.
Yeah, I saw somebody break down the math saying that they would have had to do, if that was one a day, which wouldn't make sense because they profess that sometimes it would take weeks or months to solve a case. It would have to be one a day for 27 years straight without weekend breaks. So there's really no logical way they could have done that many. But
so that makes me skeptical moving forward in general. Like, okay, this is obviously a lie. There's no fucking way you did that unless you guys were split up doing it, but it doesn't sound like that was ever the case.
Yeah, and that seems to be kind of the main theme throughout the rest of their history here, and as they start to get bigger and bigger cases of the paranormal is starts out as maybe half-truths about some things that are going on, and then eventually becomes completely fabricated to the point that the story that they're telling has very little to do with the actual events that happened with the people that they're trying to help. But yeah, as they were getting more and more into studying the paranormal. They obviously, we mentioned earlier, both grew up Catholic, were devout Catholics. I guess Lorraine actually earlier on was much more of a skeptic, which I find kind of surprising because she's supposed to be the clairvoyant one. But I guess she said that until she met Ed and started doing kind of some of these paranormal investigations and started having some more like terrifying experiences, she was a lot more of a skeptic about like how true the haunting stuff was. And he was always very like gung-ho. This is I'm a demonologist and it's
self-proclaimed
shit. Self-proclaimed demonologist.
Now I'm wondering if there's a possibility that maybe her being somebody who claimed to see auras and things like that maybe she just was like taking like a very empathetic spirit and really glomming on to Ed Warren's like his like, you know, heavy spiritualism and like this like real attachment to God and to demons and these things, and that was making what she was experiencing in her life seem so much more like real.
it heightened it because of his belief in it.
That's kind of my theory, but I mean, there's a ton more when you get into the actual like real cases and everything.
Well, according to Judith Penny, the only god they worshipped was money.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier some of the like panic that played into this, but as they start to get into the years in the 60s and 70s and then into the 80s when they're really doing their biggest cases, this is also the same time as things like the Satanic Panic. There is this big cultural panic about immoral behaviors and things that could invite in demons, and that was the entire kind of concept behind how they would explain to people in their lectures. That's part of how they made money was and this is where I think some of the nuance comes into about how much they were taking advantage of people, because they would not charge for their services, but then they would go and write books and do lectures at colleges about these cases and make a lot of money off of those things. But their whole thing was like the law of like attraction of spirits. And basically what this quote that I found said is that the Warrens' cosmology was metaphysical victim blaming. Evil could only happen to people who were already evil themselves. It says, quote, people who do negative or patently unnatural things are essentially doing the devil's work for him and actually attract negative spirits to their side, Ed tells us. So we look a little bit more into that, and that plays into this whole like fear of the immorality of, and that's why they talked at colleges, is this idea of like young people engaging in drugs and sex and homosexuality, things that the Warrens were not fans of, being Catholic. And so basically a lot of this comes down to, if you have an addiction, if you have a mental illness, if you are, like I said, an addiction, like you're a drunk, if you are in some sort of domestic violence situation, all these things that would typically just be shitty human moral behaviors then become these grand invitations to Satan, and that's how your house became possessed and why it keeps following you. And really all of it is just to me, like the closest parallel I could think of was like televangelists, where they're like if you don't give me this money and stuff, like then Satan's gonna come after you, but I have the magic power to come in and heal you and help you, and it's all a grift.
Yeah,
and
it's just a smaller scale. Yeah,
and this is really where like the skeeviness comes in for me as to like some of the mentality behind this. And then also
sounded like Ed might have been abusive himself.
Yeah, so a lot came out in the later years, and especially after they passed away, about Ed being physically and verbally abusive to Lorraine throughout their marriage, and
also in a 40-year sexual relationship with somebody who, when he started this relationship, was 15 at the time.
I didn't want to shatter the audience's.
Yucky.
I'm trying to build a picture here, and you're shattering it with a sledgehammer. That's the big thing that everybody's been talking about for the past several years. Yeah, pretty much since the Conjuring movies started happening, people have been like, "Did you know?"
But we also don't know if it's 100% accurate. Like, I don't know, because from what I was hearing is obviously the woman Judith, right, waited until after Ed was dead.
Yeah,
and then Lorraine was on her deathbed.
Yeah, so
I don't know.
That's something where it's like I had known that for a while, and I just tried to kind of keep it out of, because to me it's less interest. Like, to me that has very little to do with the rest of this stuff. Like, beyond the idea of like, oh, maybe Ed Warren was a shitty person in his personal life, I'm more interested in like how what they were doing was affecting people and taking advantage of people. And it's like, yeah, and then it's a shame to find out that he also was probably an abuser, and it obviously makes a lot of the shittier like thoughts about what they're doing feel stronger.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I was trying not because that's the main thing. It's like people can ignore all of this and just say, well, he was an abuser, so I don't want to hear about it. And
it sounded like Lorraine wasn't that nice either.
Yeah.
So it sounded like they were both kind of mean in some regard, right?
Yeah, and
but we don't know. We don't know for sure.
They both had their demons.
Crazy. It's crazy how little we know about their background, considering that they're public figures.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes down to they were trying to build a narrative around, and a myth around themselves in order to make money. And this actually does tie in to what I was talking about earlier with the fact that Lorraine like consulted on the Conjuring movies, and how there's this like picture perfect version of the Warrens on screen. I actually read that she was always closely involved with how their love story was going to be portrayed, and that their contract on that film had very specific demands. Neither Ed or Lorraine could be depicted sexually assaulting anyone or having sex with minors in the Conjuring universe. Furthermore, neither the husband nor wife could be depicted as participating in an extramarital sexual relationship. And I guess a lawyer looking at this contract said that they've never seen anything that specific unless it's to hedge an obvious, like, true story, you know, that they don't want to have come out. Yeah. So I think at this point it's not really...
Is that like the Streisand effect?
Yeah, exactly. And then 100% more attention goes toward that thing than would have otherwise.
What is that?
So the Streisand effect, basically, Barbara Streisand had a house that was along this...
It was just sitting there?
Yeah, just sitting there. Along this long path of, like, typical, like, Hollywood houses. And it was part of this group that tour buses would go across. And then this tour bus company released a book that had her house among other celebrity houses in it, which obviously for a celebrity, not the most ideal scenario. But she decided to try to push back against this tour company and basically like took them to court around all the stuff about not wanting her house to be like written down and like the number and like the location of this house. All the while drawing more attention to where her house is because of the case, which therefore is...
So people started intentionally trying to go get photos of the house and stuff because she had made such a big deal out of it to troll her. Okay. So yeah, that's the Streisand effect.
There we go. Thank you. I don't know if anybody else didn't know that, but if you didn't, now you do.
Well, speaking of Barbara Streisand and other ghoulish looking things, let's talk about the Annabelle doll, because now we're getting into some of their earlier exploits and investigations.
Yeah, so basically when Annabelle is first introduced in The Conjuring is the most accurate information depicted on film of what actually happened.
Yeah.
Anything between the Annabelle movie creation and Comes Home is all completely fabricated from my understanding.
Yeah, and I think to me, the best example of the attitude you should take going into these Conjuring movies is just the difference in how Annabelle looks between the real Annabelle and the movie version of Annabelle. Like,
it's literally a Raggedy Ann doll.
Yeah, if you look at people are mostly disappointed, I think, to learn that the actual Annabelle was, just a Raggedy Ann doll in a glass case, and then you have this terrifying fucking, like, porcelain cracked-eyed doll thing, and it immediately looks 100 times more terrifying, and that's kind of the whole spirit of these Conjuring movies is like, let's take the little half-truths and let's blow them up into like, now Ed's falling out a window and he's gonna get impaled by a crazy ghost tree. And but the Annabelle doll was a doll that this nursing student in
1970
had brought into the home,
gift from her mom for her birthday.
Yeah, and so when they bring the doll in, and it pretty much does what it said it shows in the Conjuring movie, starts scrawling notes to them like "help me" and weird stuff like that.
Well, first started like little movements, right? It's very subtle, and then it would slowly build, and then at one point it would get into positions that didn't make sense for the doll, because if they tried to
like cowgirl, reverse cowgirl,
if I got into reverse cowgirl, it wouldn't be able to do that if they tried to do it. So it would be sitting in a way that's like, how the fuck is it sitting like that?
And then they found out through
they didn't even have paper, like the paper that she was writing on, they didn't even have in the house, allegedly.
Okay, that's spooky.
Allegedly.
Yeah, and then they found out that, I guess, the thought they consulted with, I think, a medium, who told them that the spirit of a girl named Annabelle was possessing the doll. So then their first attempt, their first thought was, okay, well, we'll kind of try to nurture this Annabelle girl. It's like the sad spirit of a dead girl. Well, then the Warrens come in eventually after the crazy shit doesn't stop, and they say...
Annabelle's a demon, brother.
Annabelle's a demon, and you need to get
just like that, That turned into Hulk Hogan.
And so then they're like, well, we'll go ahead and take this bitch off your hands, and Annabelle ended up in the infamous glass case with the sign that says positively do not open, and became kind of the centerpiece of the famous Warren Occult Museum, which was in the basement of their home, adjacent to Ed's office, where they kept all of their supposedly accursed objects. Most people who went to this museum, it's now closed now, so you can't visit it. It's supposed to be relocated at some point, but it's just been kind of closed. But anybody who visited said, mostly skeptics, would say it just looked like a collection of like Halloween store knickknacks and antique shop knickknacks. One person was like, they have a coffin that they say is from a time they met and a real life vampire, and they were like, okay, so how do you have no evidence of the vampire actually existing, but you were able to get his coffin? Well, that's obvious. They staked him through the heart. He turned to dust. They took the coffin.
Yeah,
you guys don't know your fucking lore.
Yeah.
Classic vampire.
Yeah, so I know at one point, too, there was a dude with the doll, and he woke up feeling like he was getting choked. And then he said he saw the doll like creeping up his leg.
And the sad thing was, he was hella into it.
Yeah, he was like, oh, no.
Oh, don't do it, baby.
Don't stop.
So most skeptics of the Annabelle story point to the fact that in 1963, so about 5 years before the Annabelle doll thing happened with the Warrens,
The Twilight Zone.
The Twilight Zone had an episode called Living Doll that had basically the exact same premise, and the woman in the episode is named Annabelle.
Damn, I didn't know
So
that.
it's pretty...
So that one's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
That they were probably either the people who had the doll or the Warrens themselves were either subliminally or intentionally influenced by this Twilight Zone episode.
I mean, who isn't? We're big zoners. You know?
True that, bro.
Zoning, baby.
Following up
Zoning.
the Annabelle case, their next big case was the Perron family. The Perron family is the focus of the first Conjuring movie. The story there is that this family moves into this farmhouse. They are tortured by some sort of malevolent spirit. It turns out that a child murdering witch named Bathsheba Sherman was supposed to have lived on this property, and the Warrens come in, and in the movie there's a big exorcism performed to save I think Lily Tomlin, and they do all this crazy stuff. I guess in reality the thought is that the Perron father, who was shown in the movie, is a trucker, and he's gone away from home most of the time, and we see that the wife starts to get these ghostly bruises and things. Most people who knew the Perron family said that he was kind of an absent, abusive father who, when he came home, would then beat his wife, and there was a lot of abuse going on within the household. When people looked into the backstory of the Bathsheba Sherman character, it turned out that there was very little truth to whether she even existed or not, and also if she did exist, it wasn't on the property that these things were happening. Which in the movie they kind of try to tie this giant kind of like map of all these areas to Bathsheba, and I think that's kind of their attempt of saying like, well, I mean, she lived like way over there, but she affected all the area around it, and that's how
Look
these
at
people got
how
haunted.
powerful this demon bitch is.
Yeah, and then especially when the first Conjuring movie came out, there's an hour-long video with the current owner of the Perron family home, where she talks about how just completely and utterly made up everything about their story.
Wow.
Both the Perrons' story and the Warrens' story is, and how it's caused them nothing but like torture since The Conjuring came out, because, and this is where we get into, okay, maybe they were actually fucking people's lives up, maybe not those people, but definitely the people who lived in houses like the Amityville house going forward, who in almost every one of these instances have been interviewed and said that they've had no experiences with the paranormal, and nothing weird's happened in any of these places, which I think should lend some credence to the idea that those families were probably having some internal strife and turmoil, and the ghost stuff ended up being a kind of made up extension of what was actually going on,
Of real demons.
but yeah, this woman who lives
internal struggles.
yeah, the woman who lives in the actual Perron family home talked about how like the number of trespassers and people
What's your child?
like verbally, people are gonna have to give us a tally of the number of coughs and sneezes throughout this episode.
We are sorry. It's not
it's a
usually
very
our
sick
style.
episode.
Yeah.
But you should just be happy that we're bringing you an episode, even though
Show must go on.
2/3 of us are hacking up along. But yeah, she just talked about how like their life has been nothing but a living hell, and how they pretty much hate the Perrons and the Warrens for putting them in this situation. A lot of people's response to this has been, well, it's because they didn't make any money off of it, so they're mad. And that's why they're coming out with all of this. Like I said, there's always going to be people on the other side of this argument saying like, well, they're just mad because they didn't see the shit, and so they're non-believers and all this. So,
But I mean, if you're doing stuff that's going to make these people miserable, like that sucks. I would hate to be in my house and it'd be a nightmare more than it already is. You know what I mean? Outside of my control.
and if it was going to be a nightmare, I would prefer that it was ghosts and not just trespassers looking to get a picture because
Looky-loos and shit.
my house was in a Conjuring movie.
But you got
that's
stuff that you wanted to touch on or no?
I mean, I'm just...
Like
so...
I thought you said there was a specific one you wanted to dive into.
I mean, like,
Oh,
I mean, like I said, all these cases have like you said, little parts about it that that are picked about, and you know, like there's a case that's later on and probably in your research as well, where like they claimed to have been part of the investigation for a really long time. They were there for less than 24 hours. Like
the entirety of the second Conjuring movie is based on like the hour they spent showing up at that place. But yeah, we'll get to it. Amityville. Gotta talk about Amityville for a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, walk me through it, because I know something happened. Like a family was murdered, but then a different family moved in.
Yeah, so Ronnie...
so there is some weird stuff that did happen in this house, right?
Well, so the actual confirmed, real, spooky, crazy thing that happened is that this man, Ronnie DeFeo Jr., did, I believe with a shotgun, kill all of his siblings and his parents in the Amityville house. So there was a tragic mass murder that happened there. He did go to prison for it. He was served, I think, like 6 25-year sentences, so basically life in prison. He passed away last year in prison. So he went to prison for that.
And did he claim that like spirits made him do it?
Not as far as I know, but there was some speculation that, I mean, down the line, this is the craziest one. And really with most of these, if you want to really get into like all of the nitty-gritty details about these cases, like especially Amityville, there's entire books, there's huge articles about them. But the
Lutzes, right?
Yeah, so the Lutzes ended up moving in and stayed for a total of 28 days before they were driven out by the demons or spirits that seem to have manifested in this house.
George and Kathy.
Yeah, the theory was that this area was where a Native American tribe would leave their sick and mentally handicapped people in this area, and so it was kind of like an Indian burial ground situation. And the thought was that DeFeo was possessed by like the murderous chieftain of the tribe, and that's why he killed his whole family.
He claimed that he heard voices that were plotting against him, and that was the reason why he thought that it was his family, and that was the reason why.
So obviously ghosts and not mental illness, but
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
gotta be it.
Which, I mean, at this time, I mean,
right,
makes a little bit more sense than it would today.
We're still struggling with getting mental illness recognized.
Yeah, so I mean, that's definitely something to keep in mind. But also, the flip of that is that means that Ed and Lorraine Warren are potentially going into these situations where people who have real mental issues, in a lot of these cases, or issues with addiction or issues with abuse, they're coming in and they are making loads of money off of completely inventing stories about these people, using their names most of the time, and basically taking advantage of their entire life stories in order to make a buck off of something that probably isn't the actual root of the problem. So while people can say, oh, they're going in to help these people, and maybe Ed and Lorraine Warren, in their heart of hearts, being Catholics, being believers, felt they were actually going in and helping people, but I think going into a situation like that and not actually addressing the issue, but instead making up all this mumbo jumbo hocus pocus around it, is only going to make the situation worse, and in most times does.
Hard to know if Ed really believed that that was the cause. You know what I mean? Like maybe he believed in what he was spouting out.
And even at the end of the day, if, you know, giving them the benefit of the doubt, maybe they didn't believe in the ghosts, but they believed in God, and maybe they were just trying to go into these situations to tell these people, hey, these are the bad things you're doing, and if you want to keep the evil away, stop doing these bad things.
Yeah.
And then maybe the people would turn a new leaf, and then they're kind of being weird, like door to door, like Jehovah's Witnesses, like, you know, have you heard about our Lord and Savior sort of thing?
I think the problem for me with that, though, is that, like, especially in this specific case of the Amityville house, they show up with like a film crew. They show up like back to the 90s.
The news.
With cameras and all that good shit.
While the Lutz are still living there?
Yes, and essentially they show up and they start like trying to take pictures, and they start breaking out like their paranormal stuff, and like there are pictures that were taken where they claimed there were ghosts in the photos that have been thoroughly debunked as just like photography errors.
I heard there was only like 2 groups that were allowed in the house. They were one of them, and they were the only one allowed to take pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really the Amityville case, I think, is the most thoroughly debunked of any of these, partially because there were enough people involved that those people have been able to come out and speak, you know, the truth of what actually went on, and
so notoriety of the case, too.
And the notoriety of the case, yeah.
The Lutzes moved out.
Yeah, so they moved out after the 28 days, went to live with the mother. They kind of on and off claimed that the evil was following them. They left all their belongings there. The movers who came to get their belongings reported no weird instances, occurrences, or anything. The next people who moved in, and pretty much everyone since then who's lived in the property has said that there's been absolutely nothing of note happening on the property outside of the fact that they had to remodel the house and take out those awesome windows and stuff because people wouldn't leave it the fuck alone. They even changed the address number so that it would confuse people who were trying to sightsee. And even the replica house they built in a different part of, I think, New York for another Amityville movie had to then be remodeled to not look like the Amityville house because it's become such an icon for horror enthusiasts.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been how many fucking movies and TV shows? It's like a billion at this point.
Yeah, and then if you really if you take the things that they reported seeing, like hoof prints in the snow, easiest thing to do. Some researchers checked the weather conditions when they said to have when they lived in that house, and it never snowed once, so there would be no hoof prints in the snow. Like things that just seemed like very overt, blatant lies. Yeah, just made up shit.
Did one of the Lutz kids write a book? I have this memory of someone writing a book and then being like, no,
so once the Warrens came in, they ended up getting in contact with the man who wrote the book that the original movie is based off of. He went off of, he never met them personally, but he listened to hundreds of hours of recordings that the Lutzes had made about their experiences, and then I think kind of just filled in the blanks in between.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. But
so then he already fabricated a story that they then fabricated.
Well, and then down the line, DeFeo's lawyer, his lawyer, when he was having his criminal trial, he actually knew the Lutzes, had talked with them, and he has claimed in recent years, or in more recent years, that they just very openly just had a few bottles of wine over one night and made up the entire thing together.
Him and the Lutzes?
Yeah, because they were like, oh, I'm defending this guy who murdered his family in this house. Like, how can you guys get something out of this situation now that you're living here? Like, they had been told about the murder when they moved in. And we're like, oh, we don't have a problem with it. Which is a little bit strange, but...
So then we probably think that nothing actually happened in that house.
Yeah.
So the Lutzes. Obviously something happened to the DeFeos.
Yeah, and that's tragic, but I think again, that's like, okay, you take something that is... Like, nobody is going to really be focusing on the actual tragedy that happened in that house because it's been so blown out into this huge myth about DeFeo and the native chieftain ghost and all this stuff where it's like...
Demons and all the
Can't
other
it just be awful
shit.
enough that a man murdered his whole family in that house? Like, that's pretty fucking terrible.
And that man... like obviously suffered from fucking schizophrenia.
Yeah,
like,
and didn't get the help that he needed, but instead went to prison for the rest of his life. And I mean, obviously, he should have gone to prison, but never got that help, but instead became the focus of 23 fucking Amityville movies. But
that might be underselling it, dude.
Yeah, and then now, and then eventually the Lutzes divorced and stayed on good terms, and then George Lutz ended up trademarking the Amityville Horror as a name. So. The Enfield Poltergeist, aka The Conjuring 2. This takes place in the UK. This one is another one that I think is very famous for being straight up bullshit.
I want to ask you real quick, because I know this one, they were not even fucking invited, right? Yeah. So with the Amityville one, did somebody ask them to come?
Or... I don't remember, John. I don't... Because it definitely seemed like they would just find out about these things through word of mouth. And
this one for
show
sure,
up.
People were like, "Who the fuck are you?" Right?
Well, especially it being in the UK, like I think at least in the Amityville situation, people would kind of knew, and they came with a news crew. So obviously, like I think that
a lot of times they bring more trouble than they're worth. Even in the instances where they've been invited by a family, in most cases they don't show up for nearly as long as you think they're going to. They show up with a bunch of,
They had 10,000 cases to get to, man.
Yeah. They show up with a bunch of hocus pocus. They bring every fucking camera in town.
Ed Warren had a huge problem with premature exorcism.
Yeah.
Don't we all?
But yeah, the Enfield Poltergeist, that's the one that basically it's a haunted flat in the UK, and it's these little girls who there's the famous photo of the little girl in red like floating in the air or whatever.
Right.
There's
kind of reminded me of Ghost Watch. Remember that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And then there's the thing where she would have water in her mouth and be able to speak like in the old man's voice. It's the stuff that you see in the Conjuring movie that's like the kind of the creepiest scenes, is her being able to talk in this old man voice. And yeah, and the whole idea was they were saying that they were being haunted by this old man that used to live in the house. And pretty much right off the bat, when people started looking into what they were doing, and they address it a little bit in The Conjuring too, because there is a part where they find out that the girl is just like staging some of the shit. But they pretty much found out when they looked a little bit into this that these girls were just very attention hungry and attention seeking. And like the picture of her floating, I guess there's video of them like taking that picture, and she's just jumping on the bed like a trampoline and taking the pictures when she's in midair. And the voice thing, they were talking about like there are people who can just do that with their vocal cords, and it was like I guess a party trick that she would show friends or like show people that she knew before this whole thing happened.
Yeah.
And then the girls would even like during interviews be arguing with each other about like what their story was, like what was real and what wasn't real. And then the Warrens, we don't have to focus on this one too much because the Warrens basically just showed up.
Yeah, they showed up
uninvited.
For
Nobody
less than a
knew
day.
who they were, and they basically told them to get the fuck out. They were like, we don't know who you are, like you're not going to help, get out. So
That's crazy. And they made a whole movie off of it. That probably made hell of money.
yeah, and that's where you get the nun, the crooked man, all this stuff that has literally nothing to do with the Enfield poltergeist. It's crazy.
I love that crooked man scene though.
Yeah. Their next highest profile case that was the center of the Conjuring The Devil Made Me Do It
Devil Made Me
Is the Devil Made Me
Donuts.
Donuts case.
Yeah, the Arnie Johnson case.
We talked about this, right?
It to a small degree during the during when we watched the film, we did talk about it somewhat. But I think there's more now, especially now that the movie's been out for a while. So there's more going on to that story. One of the things during this process is that Ed claimed that there were 43 demons that lived inside of this guy, which I'm like, that's a very like precise, specific number. I'm like, it's super fucking bizarre.
But yeah, kind of similar to what happens in the movie, the Warrens had already been called into this case because Arnie's girlfriend's little brother was supposedly possessed. They were said to have had this crazy demon that would left claw marks in the walls, which you see in the movie. Arnie is said to have at some point asked the demon to go into him. The Warrens claim that's exactly what happened. And then he ended up getting into a fight with, I believe, the landlord at his girlfriend's place, and the
Alan Bono.
Murderizing him.
Yeah, and ended up murderizing him. The day after the killing, Lorraine informed the Brookfield police that Johnson was possessed when the crime was committed. A media blitz soon surrounded the story, fueled in part by the Warrens, whose agents promised them that lectures, a book, and a movie detailing the gruesome case were already in the works. There's a quote here that I think is pretty telling about the entirety of the Warrens' grift. In a Washington Post article, Lorraine seems to have already cashed in the checks that she anticipated from the family tragedy. Will we have a book written about this? Lorraine Warren asks rhetorically. Yes, we will. Will we lecture about it? Yes, we will. Are we talking to writers and movie producers? No, we're not. Our agents at the William Morris Agency are. So basically, as soon as this man killed somebody, and then they were like, how can we capitalize on this entire situation? Yeah.
Totally.
So he attempted to submit a plea in court, not guilty by virtue of possession. Unsurprisingly, and again, I think this is where like anybody with literally 2 brain cells could go, this is complete bullshit, the judge immediately rejected the defense, arguing that no such defense could ever exist in a court of law due to lack of evidence, and that it would be irrelative and unscientific to allow the testimony. The defense chose to imply that he did it by self. Yeah, and so they instead just decided to go with a self-defense. The jury was not legally allowed to consider demonic possession as a viable explanation for the killing. They deliberated for 15 hours and convicted him at first of a 10 to 20 year sentence. And as I think we talked about in our episode, he only served 5 years for good behavior, and ended up getting out and getting married to the girl whose landlord he had killed. And I guess they lived happily ever after and potentially made money off of this story. Who knows? But the Warrens definitely 100% did. So yeah, and it's the worst Conjuring movie. So
It is the worst Conjuring movie. On top of that, apparently there was also an attempt in 2007 to sue Lorraine Warren for the writing of The Devil in Connecticut, basically saying that the entire story is just fabricated, like that they went through this process of like live in real time making this person who'd committed a crime and who was dealing with obvious like real life quote unquote demons, like that they were struggling from this other thing that caused them to, you know, commit this murder when in reality there was a ton more going on. And obviously that's part of the reason why this person, you know, spent time in jail. They were, you know, punished for a crime that they committed, and that was just the end of that. And the Warrens were immediately like, how do we make money off of this?
Well, I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, they were good at what they were doing, because this case would probably not even be a blip on anyone's radar if it had just been, you know, because how many times do you think that a person who's off their probably off their rocker in some way, who has committed a violent crime, has just been like, oh, the devil made me do it, or I was possessed? Like, I'm sure this happened 10 million times, but because the Warrens were like, they were already involved with the family, and so they were like, we're just going to take advantage of the fact that we're already here and blow this up into like a really newsworthy, sensationalist thing.
High profile.
You know, again, they were great showmen, just like Houdini, just with very different motivation. Well, I guess at the end of the day, money was the motivation for both of them, but just went about it in different ways.
It was money that killed the man.
Usually is. That's the true demon, the root of all evil. So we don't have to go as deep into all the specifics about a couple of these latter cases, just kind of what they ended up inspiring. But they investigated the Snedeker house, which was the inspiration for A Haunting in Connecticut. The author Ray Garton, who wrote the account of the Snedeker haunting, later called into question the veracity of the accounts contained in his own book, saying the family involved, which was going through serious problems with alcoholism and drug addiction, could not keep their story straight, and I became very frustrated. It's hard writing a nonfiction book when all the people involved are telling you different stories. To paranormal investigator Benjamin Radford, Garton said of Lorraine, if she told me the sun would come up tomorrow morning, I'd get a second opinion.
I heard that too. I was cracking up.
Most people that you read... So a lot of the families talk about how incredibly warm and friendly and amazing the Warrens were. But when you talk to most of these people who actually worked with them or wrote for them, they kind of talk about how they were kind of just like pains in the asses who you could never get a straight story out of, and were obviously just, you know, in it for the cash.
Makes sense. Butter up the family. Get as much story as you can. Make them feel like you're helping them out, and then turn around and capitalize on their tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, it's... in a lot of cases, like I said, the specifics of these like individual cases oftentimes come down to, you know, something happened in somebody's house due to, you know, some form of a mental disability, or, you know, something going awry, or like things like trauma and abuse that have caused these things to spiral out of control. I mean, you have like with the case of the girls, you know, basically fabricating a bunch of stuff and trying to create this story. They're attention seeking for obvious reasons, because they're
being raised by a single mother, not having a father figure in the household, which I'm not saying is like, you know, the end all, you know, family destroying thing, but obviously they probably didn't. And also having multiple siblings, like, you just don't get as much attention as you would like. And even me as a kid, like, I loved playing pranks and I loved like trying to spook people. I could see myself, you know, inventing an Enfield poltergeist. Like,
and you still do those urinal pranks.
Those are my favorite. I like a good sword fight. But yeah, and then the Smurl haunting.
Smurl?
Yeah, in 1986, the Smurls were another family that were supposedly haunted. This one got very graphic in terms of there were some things saying that the ghosts sexually assaulted members of the family. Basically, after this became a huge media frenzy, and eventually the Smurls told press that they were tired of the constant media. And then this is the part that I wanted to get to. However, within a few months, they had authored, along with Ed and Lorraine Warren and a newspaper writer named Robert Caron, a paperback book already of their story called The Haunting, or The Haunted. The book was criticized by reviewers, such as Times leader writer Joseph Murasak, who wrote, Robert Caron forsakes the principles of his trade to give readers a one-sided account of what did or didn't occur over several years in Jack and Janet Smurl's former home. Said that the book was poorly written, adding that it's hard to conceive of a supposedly sophisticated, objective, and credible reporter like Caron taking their story seriously, given the complete lack of any empirical or physical evidence to support it.
Apparently, the local clergy, which were oftentimes in these cases brought on to help aid in like exorcisms and things like that during these cases, apparently their reports were that there was nothing unusual that took place at the Smurl house at all, even though the Warrens, up until the day that they died, claimed otherwise, that there was activity and all these other things going on.
But something to note too concerning the church is that from what I read and heard, the church did trust in what Ed and Lorraine Warren were doing a lot of the time, and actually would call them in first when people would contact them about needing exorcisms or needing help with some supernatural thing. The church would just call in Ed and Lorraine Warren. I don't know if that's because they thought they could actually help, or maybe it was because the church was like, we ain't got time for that shit, and we're going to send them in instead to like maybe hopefully put a Band-Aid on it. Mm-hmm. But they did seem to have some sort of, in with the church, and that gave them this kind of,
credibility almost, right?
Yeah, and we're, it's the whole like, I'm not an exorcist, but I can perform exorcisms, and that whole thing where it's like, yeah, I could get away with it because I'm better than 100 priests, Ed's whole pompous mentality around that. And then the final thing that I wanted to mention in terms of their cases was the White Lady of the Union Cemetery was one that they for years talked about, where Ed Warren said that he had video proof. And this was a thing that they just went on about all the time, was how much video, photo, and audio proof they had of the supernatural. But when they were asked by other paranormal investigators if they could see any of that stuff, the Warrens would be like, nope. And basically were very close, like would guard every bit of evidence outside of what you could see in their museum as being like, we have this stuff, but we're not going to show it to you. They said they had proof of a werewolf that they had once encountered, never showed it to anybody. The video of the Union Cemetery ghost that Ed Warren took did eventually get released by the son-in-law who runs the company now, and it's like any other like Bigfoot type video where it's just grainy ass,
look at that blurry picture
with like a little,
of Fuck Squatch,
with like a little speck in the background, and it's like, that's the proof, that's what you've all been waiting for years and years and years. So they would never show any proof, but they would claim, much like their whole we've solved 10,000, worked on 10,000 cases, they would say we have all of this definitive proof of the supernatural, and none of that stuff ever came out, nor has it come out since they've passed. So really, I don't want to say another time that it was all bullshit, because I feel like I've said that enough times, but if you by the end of this don't start to get the feeling that this was a grift, then
take what you want from that, right? And if you're in love with the performances from the movies, then be in love with them. But that's not necessarily what Ed and Lorraine were really like. Just enjoy those characters for how they were portrayed on film and nothing else.
And even at the end of the day, if ghosts and spirits and demons do exist, I don't think that means that this stuff was true. Like, those things aren't, mutually exclusive.
Right,
like,
totally.
you can still say that ghosts and the paranormal exist and say that Ed and Lorraine were frauds, who took advantage of people. They may not have done particularly horrible things to people. They weren't going in guns blasting at ghosts and killing people or something, but they still really upended a lot of people's lives, and sometimes, like in the Smurl thing you were talking about, potentially for literally with nothing to go on, with no basis to completely upend these people's lives. But I do think, just like you said, if you feel like you have some connection to what Ed and Lorraine Warren were doing and you love the stories, that's cool. But I think that there is merit in separating the fact from the fiction.
Yeah.
Just like we tried to do with Houdini, just like, this, we're kind of trying to do with this, digging into these stories is like, okay, what do we know for sure? Mm-hmm. And what logically makes sense in these stories, right, and what doesn't.
And we're going to talk a lot about that with our next episode.
Yeah, but to wrap up Ed and Lorraine's Warren story, we did briefly talk about the fact that they had another woman living with them for upwards of like 40 years.
Yes.
In their house.
They would say different things, that she was their cousin, she was their niece,
kissing cousin, maybe.
Couldn't get their story straight about who she was.
Yeah, Ed eventually passed away. Lorraine was alive to see at least the beginning of the Conjuring franchise. She was a consultant on that. According to James Wan, she was a very sweet person. When Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson went to visit their house and went to the spooky museum, I guess Patrick Wilson like just dove right in and was like, I'm going to go in and explore, and he wasn't scared of any of it. And Vera was like, I'm not going anywhere near that place. And she was saying that was kind of like how their real life personalities paralleled the real Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so she was like, he was a lot more like practical, like, let's go in and do this thing. And she was a lot more like, okay, no, I'm getting bad vibes.
He also has like horror pedigree. I mean, coming off of
Insidious.
Yeah, Insidious and everything.
Yeah, and then Lorraine passed away in 2019. Both passed away in their sleep from natural causes, and they are buried in the Stepney Cemetery in Monroe, Connecticut. And then I have a list here of all of the movies that have been made based on their exploits, specifically on their exploits, not the 22 Amityville sequels. But yeah, so the Amityville Horror and its 2005 remake. A movie from 83 that I couldn't find much on called The Demon Murder Case. 1991's The Haunted. 2009's The Haunting in Connecticut. Then The Conjuring from 2013. The Conjuring 2 from 2016. The Devil Made Me Do It from 2021.
It's been almost 10 years since that movie came out.
And I still remember going and seeing it together in Riverbank. Annabelle from 2014. Annabelle Creation from 2017. Annabelle Comes Home from 2019. The Nun from 2018. The Curse of La Llorona is in the Conjuring universe, but not, I guess, technically, but The Nun isn't one of their cases either. And then the upcoming Nun 2. So...
God damn.
Yeah, how many of those movies I want? None.
How about none? But yeah, I mean, that's
it.
All I got to say about the Warrens. If you didn't get a good vibe for how, I don't hate them, but I don't believe them.
Right, and for me, that doesn't take anything away from the movies. Those movies are still good.
Yeah, I still love the first. I still love the first Conjuring, and I'm a big fan of the second one. And the third one has some spooky moments, but I'm never watching those going like, I can't believe that shit actually happened.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it
they're
as
fictitious movies,
and I also just look at it as it's at least those first two are good James Wan movies, and I'm more like, ooh, he did some spooky camera work, and there's a Dead Man's Bone song.
Yeah.
So
sign me up.
Yeah, so hope you enjoyed hearing us talk about the Warrens. I know it probably wasn't the most comprehensive, detailed video.
It's actually hard to find a lot about them, which was crazy.
I had so many different links to links in my notes from all the different stuff that I collected, and I tried to make that somewhat manageable.
Thank you for doing the heavy lifting with like the timeline stuff. I mean, for the most part, the research that I found was mostly just kind of like splintered off, and like it was easier just to kind of find bits and pieces of like these are the things that actually happened in the case, these are the things they said happened in the case, these are the things that the skeptics say didn't take place.
If you, like I said, if you're interested in reading about these hauntings, whether you want to read about the events that were supposed to have happened, or you're interested in reading about all of the skeptical stuff, there are plenty of resources. I got a lot of the information off of starting at Wikipedia and then actually going into the sources and going to the articles and reading what people had to say. And that was super helpful with getting like a more, like I said, nuanced look. Even if overall it was kind of, negative on the Warrens, I still felt it was a lot more nuanced than if I had come in with, a week ago going like, fuck the Warrens, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So...
Excuse me. All right, cool. Well, speaking of separating myth from facts, next week we want to dive into Vlad.
I'm good with that.
All right, let's do it.
The man behind Dracula.
Yeah, the origin of Dracula.
Tepes.
Should be plenty of information on that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about Vlad, the inspiration for Dracula, but a very different being and character. Like you said, separating fact from fiction. So
hopefully John and I are less sick next week.
I'm counting on it.
Right, and if you haven't, go ahead and hit subscribe or whatever the fuck for whatever platform you're on. We would really appreciate it. And if you're interested, go ahead and hit that Creep Cult where you can hear us talk about the Chuckster. And that'll wrap it up for this week. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. I've been Tone.
I've been John.
I've been the man.
Dude, nailed it. You fucking nailed it.
And web sensation Anthony.
I'm pulling back my veto. It's in.
Internet, darling.
Keep it creepy.